Notification sound on my phone is something I usually ignore. I get dozens of them every day. Slack messages, calendar reminders, the occasional text from my mom asking if I'm eating enough. But the sound that woke me up at 6:47 on a Tuesday morning in March was different. It came 3 times in a row, each one landing like a knock on a door you weren't expecting. I reached for my phone without even sitting up. Fraud alert. Fraud alert. Fraud alert. My bank security system had flagged 3 charges on my Visa in the past 18 hours. The first was $1,240 at a ski rental shop in Park City, Utah. The second was $30,600 at a resort hotel, also in Park City. The third, and this one made me actually sit up, was $8,900 at a place called the Alpine Table, a restaurant. I sat there for a long moment, just staring at my screen. I hadn't been to Utah. I hadn't been anywhere in months except my apartment and the office. I work in financial compliance for a mid-sized firm in Chicago, which means I spend most of my life staring at spreadsheets and trying to convince executives that no, they cannot do that particular thing without triggering an SEC review. I hadn't taken a vacation in over a year. I opened my banking app and scrolled back further. There were more charges I hadn't caught, smaller ones from the days before. A grocery run for $340, a gas station fill-up in Salt Lake City for $85, a spa appointment for $420. All of them in Utah. All of them on a card that had been sitting in my wallet in my apartment in Chicago. Except, I realized slowly, it hadn't been sitting in my wallet. I had given my brother a card 2 months earlier. His name is Derek. He's 31, 2 years older than me, and he has what our mother generously calls a hard time with stability. What that actually means is that he has never held a job for more than 8 months, has borrowed money from every person in our extended family at least once, and has a talent for showing up exactly when things are going well for someone else and attaching himself to that momentum like he had something to do with it. I had given him the card for what I thought was a specific one-time reason. He'd called me in January, 6 weeks before the charges, saying his car needed a timing belt replacement or it was going to leave him stranded. He'd quoted me $680. He sounded embarrassed, which he almost never does, and I thought that meant something. I told him I'd add him as an authorized user on a secondary card I had, a card with a $15,000 limit that I kept for emergencies in business travel, and that he should use it only for the repair, then give the card back. He said he would. He thanked me 3 times. He called me the best sister in the world, which I remember thinking was a little much. I tried calling him from bed. Voicemail. I texted him, "Where are you? Call me right now. Urgent." And watched the read receipt appear immediately, which meant he was awake and looking at his phone and choosing not to respond. So I called my mother. She picked up on the second ring, which surprised me because it was barely 7 in the morning. She sounded like she'd been awake for a while. "Did you know Derek was in Park City?" I asked. There was a pause that lasted exactly 1 second too long. "He mentioned a trip," she said carefully. "A trip?" I got out of bed and walked to my kitchen. "Mom, he has my credit card. There are over $14,000 in charges on it, and he's in Utah." Another pause. Then, "Kara, I'm sure there's an explanation." "What explanation covers $8,900 at a restaurant?" She didn't answer that directly. Instead, she said his friend Hoop was doing a trip. It was sort of last minute and he didn't want to be the only one who couldn't go. You know how he gets when he feels left behind. I stood in my kitchen holding my phone and staring at the coffee maker that hadn't finished brewing yet and tried to understand what I was hearing. My brother had taken my credit card, the one I gave him for a $680 car repair, and used it to fund a ski vacation in Utah with his friends. And my mother had known. "He was going to tell you," she said. He just wanted to wait until he got back so he could explain everything in person. Explain $14,000? Kara, I want to know the current total, Mum. Right now. Because I'm looking at this app and it keeps updating. She went quiet. I scrolled through the charges while we sat there in silence. By the time I'd added them up, the total was sitting at $22,400. Derek had been in Park City for 6 days, and in that time he had used my credit card to pay for a hotel suite, ski equipment rentals, restaurant dinners for what appeared to be a group of at least 8 people, a private snowmobile tour, and what the charge description listed only as entertainment services. I did not ask what the entertainment services were. I need him to call me, I said. Today, not tomorrow, not when he gets back. Today, he's going to be back Friday. Today, Mum. I hung up and called the bank. Here's the thing about credit card fraud that most people don't understand until they're actually dealing with it. When you've voluntarily given someone the card, when you've made them an authorized user, it complicates the dispute process significantly. The bank representative I spoke to that morning was patient and thorough, and she walked me through my options, and none of them were as clean as I wanted them to be. Because I had added Derek as an authorized user, the charges weren't technically unauthorized in the way the bank defines that term. I could dispute them, but it would require a police report, documentation, a formal affidavit stating that the card had been given for a specific limited purpose and that the additional charges constituted fraud. I asked her what she recommended. She said she couldn't give me legal advice, but that I might want to speak to an attorney. I removed Derek from the account. I froze the card. I called my firm's in-house legal counsel, a woman named Janet who has seen everything in 25 years of financial law, and left her a message summarizing the situation. Then I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and wrote down every fact I could remember: the date I added him, the conversation we'd had about the car repair, every charge in chronological order. Derek called at noon. Hey, so I heard you talk to Mom. How much of my money did you spend? I was going to pay it back. How much, Derek? A breath. The card's at like 22, maybe 23. But listen, Gara, I have a plan. I've been talking to some people out here about a business opportunity, and when it comes through, you'll get every penny back plus stop. I had to actually close my eyes for a second. Stop talking about a business opportunity. You took my credit card and spent $23,000 on a vacation. You didn't ask me. You didn't tell me. You let it go on for 6 days. I knew you'd say no. Yes, I would have said no. That's correct. You have the money, Kara. That is not the point. You make good money. You've told me yourself the card limit is 15, Derek. My voice came out very flat and very quiet, which is something that happens when I get past a certain point of angry. The limit is 15,000. You went over the limit. Do you understand what that means for my credit? He didn't answer. It means I have an over-limit balance that's now affecting my credit utilization, which affects my credit score, which, because I'm in the middle of a mortgage pre-approval process, could affect my ability to buy a home, which I have been working toward for 3 years. Silence. I want the money back, I said. All of it. By the end of the month. I don't have it. Then you need to find it. Kada, come on. You're my sister. We're family. Can we just... Derek? If you don't pay me back, I'm filing a police report and pursuing this as fraud. I have documentation. I have the conversation where you told me the card was for a car repair. I have every charge. Talk to a lawyer if you want, but that's where I'm headed. He hung up. My mother called 20 minutes later. She was crying, which she does when she wants me to soften. It usually works. I love my mother, and I hate making her cry. And Derek has known this his entire life. He feels terrible, she said. He should. He's going to make it right. With what money, Mum? He hasn't held a job since October. He has some savings. He told me 2 months ago he needed to borrow $680 for a car repair because he was broke. She got quiet. He doesn't have savings, I said. He has my credit card charges, and you knew he was going to use it, didn't you? Another pause. This one felt different from the earlier ones. This one had guilt in it. He called me before he left, she said finally. He said you had told him he could use the card for the trip. I sat with that for a moment. He told you I said that. He said you offered, and you believed him. He's my son, Kara. He lied to you, Mom. He lied to you to get you to not worry about it, because he knew if you called me and asked, the whole thing would fall apart. She started to cry again. Harder this time. I just want you two to get along. I just want the family to be okay. Can't you just? I know it's a lot of money, but you're doing so well, and he's been struggling so much, and I just think if we can all sit down together. He spent $9,000 at one restaurant, Mom. She stopped crying, just for a second. One dinner, I said. for a group of people I've never met, on my card, without asking me. And then he lied to you about it so you wouldn't tip me off. The line was quiet for a long time. I'll talk to him, she said softly. I'll make him call you. He already called me. He told me he doesn't have the money. After I got off the phone, I sat in my apartment for the rest of the afternoon thinking about a very specific thing, about a decision I had made 11 months earlier that now felt different than it had at the time. 11 months ago, my grandmother passed away. She left behind a house in a suburb outside Indianapolis. Nothing fancy, a 3-bedroom ranch she'd owned outright for decades, with a small mortgage she'd taken out late in life for renovations. In her will, she had divided her estate evenly between her 3 grandchildren, me, Derek, and our cousin Jess, who lives in Portland and has exactly 0 drama in her life. The house needed work. Jess wanted cash, not property. Derek said he wanted to sell, but that he didn't have the money to cover his share of the carrying costs, while we listed it taxes, utilities, basic maintenance. And could I maybe cover his portion and subtract it from his share when we sold? I had agreed. Because he was my brother, and because I thought it would make the process smoother, and because our mother had asked me to. For 11 months, I had been covering Derek's third of the carrying costs on that house. It wasn't enormous, maybe $400 to $500 a month, but it added up, and more importantly, it meant that Derek had equity in a property that I had been subsidizing for nearly a year. The house had been listed for a few weeks at that point. We had a buyer, we were 3 weeks from closing. The projected sale price was $310,000, meaning each of us stood to receive roughly $103,000 after the mortgage payoff and fees. I called Janet, the attorney, the next morning. I explained everything, the credit card situation, the carrying costs I'd been covering, the upcoming sale. I asked her what my options were. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You've been paying his carrying costs with a documented payment trail. Every month, bank transfers with notes. And you have the original email exchange where he agreed you'd be reimbursed from his share of the sale?" "Yes." "Okay," she said. "Here's what you can do." What I could do, it turned out, was file a civil claim against Derek for the credit card charges, which, with proper documentation of the limited purpose authorization, I had a reasonable case for, and simultaneously file a lien against his portion of the estate sale proceeds to recover the carrying costs he owed me. Neither of these things required Derek's cooperation. Both of them could happen before closing. I asked Janet to start the paperwork. I did not tell Derek. I did not tell my mother. I did not answer the texts that came in over the next 2 weeks. From Derek, increasingly frantic. From my mother, increasingly plaintive. From a number I didn't recognize that turned out to be my aunt, calling on Derek's behalf to ask me to be reasonable. I was being reasonable. I was being extremely reasonable. I was using the legal system exactly as designed. 12 days after I filed the lien, Derek's attorney, yes, he had apparently found money for an attorney, sent me a letter requesting that I release it. The letter used phrases like family harmony and good faith resolution and disproportionate response. I forwarded it to Janet, who responded on my behalf with a counteroffer. Derek could settle the credit card debt in full and I would release the lien. Or we could proceed to closing with the lien in place, and his share of the proceeds would be reduced accordingly. He called me the night he received Janet's response. "You're seriously doing this?" His voice had that quality it gets when he's genuinely surprised. A slight flatness, like he can't quite process the information. "You're putting a lien on my inheritance." "I'm recovering money you owe me." "Yes." "Mom is devastated." "I've heard." "This isn't who you are, Kara. You're not this person. You've always been the one who what?" I asked. "The one who covers for you. The one who loans you money you don't pay back. The one who lets things go because you're struggling and I'm doing okay and it would cause a scene if I pushed back." He didn't say anything. "I have been doing this for 15 years, Derek. Since you bounced rent money from Mom and I covered it without telling her. Since you wrecked Dad's car and I took the blame. Since you borrowed $4,000 from Grandma 2 years before she died and told her it was a loan and never paid back a cent. That's not. I know about all of it. I've always known. I let it go every time because I thought you'd eventually get your footing and it would stop. It didn't stop." His voice got quieter. I'm sorry about the card, I really am. I just, I wanted to go. Everyone was going and I didn't have the money, and I knew you'd say no, and I just made a choice. I said, you made a choice, and I made mine. Closing happened on a Thursday morning in April. I drove to Indianapolis the night before and stayed at a hotel near the title company. Derek did not come in person. He signed his closing documents remotely via DocuSign from wherever he was. My cousin Jess drove in from Portland and we had dinner together the night before at a quiet Italian place downtown, and she squeezed my hand across the table and said, "You know you're doing the right thing." I had needed to hear that more than I realized. At closing, the title company disbursed the proceeds according to the agreed upon distribution. Derek's share, after the lien was applied, came to just under $68,000. The lien covered $5,900 in carrying costs I had documented, plus the $22,600 in credit card charges that we had settled through the civil claim process. His attorney had ultimately advised him not to fight it. My share came to $130,400, which I transferred directly to the account my mortgage broker had on file. 3 weeks later, my pre-approval came through. The credit card balance, now paid, had fallen off my utilization report. My score had recovered. I found an apartment in Andersonville I had been watching for months. I put in an offer. It was accepted. My mother called me the day I got the keys. She had not been speaking to me much since the settlement. Not angrily, exactly, but carefully. The way she speaks when she's trying to figure out how to feel about something. Derek says you took most of his inheritance, she said. Derek owes me $28,000, I said. He's still got $68,000 after everything I was owed. That's more money than he's earned in the last 2 years combined. She was quiet. Mom, I love Derek. He's my brother. But I spent 15 years being the person who covered for him and let things go and absorb the cost of his choices. I can't do that anymore. Not because I don't love him, but because it was hurting me and it wasn't actually helping him. He's really struggling, she said softly. I know. And if he wants my help getting into counseling, or finding a job program, or figuring out a real plan, I will help with that. I will be there. But I can't be his ATM anymore. I can't keep pretending that it's generosity when it's actually just me being afraid of conflict. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Where did you come up with that?" "I've been thinking about it for a while. It sounds like something a therapist would say." "I've been seeing one since January, actually." Another long pause. "I didn't know that," she said. "I know you didn't." "Is it helping?" I was standing in my new apartment with the keys in my hand, looking out at a street I was about to learn, a neighborhood I was about to belong to. The afternoon light was coming through the west-facing windows in that particular way it does in late spring in Chicago. Gold and a little hazy, the kind of light that makes things look like they're beginning. "Yeah," I said. "It really is. I've thought a lot about what I want to say about all of this, now that it's been several months and the sharpest edges have worn down a little. I'm not angry the way I was in March. I don't think I was wrong to do what I did. But I've also stopped telling the story at parties as a triumphant thing because it's more complicated than that. I lost something when I filed that lien. Not money. I got money. I lost a version of my relationship with my brother that had existed, however dysfunctionally, for 29 years. We still talk. We talked last month, actually. He called to tell me he'd started working at a landscaping company and that it was going okay. The conversation lasted 6 minutes and was a little stiff, and we both said, "Well, anyway," at the end of it. In that way people do when they want to hang up, but don't want to seem like they're hanging up. I don't know what we'll look like in 5 years. I genuinely don't know. What I do know is that I sleep better than I have in a long time. I own property. I have a therapist I see every other Thursday. I have a savings account I don't tip into for other people's emergencies anymore. I have a life that feels, for maybe the first time, like it was built around my actual choices instead of everyone else's needs. There's a quote I've had in my phone notes for a few months now, something I wrote down during a session. It says, "You can love someone completely and still refuse to let their chaos become your crisis." I don't know if my therapist said it, or if I read it somewhere, or if I came up with it in the car on the way home. It doesn't matter. I believe it. I have a small porch of my bedroom in the new place. I drink my coffee out there in the mornings when the weather allows. I watch the street wake up. I don't check my fraud alerts in a panic anymore because the only person who has access to my accounts is me. That turned out to be enough. More than enough. It turned out to be exactly the thing I've been working toward without knowing it. I've been thinking about cause and effect a lot lately, not in some abstract philosophical way, just in the very plain, concrete way that life eventually forces you to think about it when you stop looking away from how things actually work. Derek didn't end up losing a chunk of his inheritance because I'm a cruel person. He lost it because of a chain of choices that started long before March, long before Park City, long before the fraud alerts lit up my phone at 6:47 in the morning. Every time he borrowed money and didn't pay it back, every time someone covered for him and absorbed the cost so he didn't have to feel it, including me, including our mother, including our grandmother who died not knowing he'd never intended to repay her. He was building something. He just didn't know what he was building until it was finished. That's the thing about choices that don't have immediate consequences. They feel free. They feel like you got away with something. But they accumulate in the background whether you're paying attention or not. And at some point, the structure they've built becomes visible. And by then, it's usually too late to do much about the architecture. I'm not exempt from this. I made choices too, for 15 years that built their own structure. Every time I stayed quiet, every time I told myself it wasn't worth the conflict, every time I let something go because I loved him, and it seemed easier, and I didn't want to be the person who caused a scene at Thanksgiving. Those choices built something in me, a pattern of self-abandonment that I had dressed up as generosity for so long I'd stopped being able to tell the difference. It took a therapist and a $22,000 credit card bill to show me the distinction. Tracing things back to their origins is a form of honesty that most of us avoid because it implicates us. It would have been easier for me to frame this story as my brother is a bad person and I was a victim. Cleaner. More satisfying at dinner parties. But it's not quite accurate. Derek is someone who was never made to reckon with his own choices, partly because the people who loved him kept making sure he didn't have to. I was one of those people. For a long time, I thought that was what love looked like. What I understand now, and I mean really understand it, not just as something I read in a self-help article, is that protecting someone from consequences is not the same as caring for them. It can look identical from the outside, it can feel identical from the inside. But one of them is actually about the other person, and one of them is about your own discomfort with watching them struggle. I did a lot of the second thing and called it the first. The intelligence required to build a good life isn't just professional or academic. It's the kind that asks hard questions about your own patterns. Why do I keep doing this? What am I afraid of? What am I calling generosity that is actually fear? Those questions take courage to sit with. Derek has never sat with them as far as I can tell. I spent about 30 years not sitting with them either. I'm sitting with them now. I don't know who Derek becomes from here. That's genuinely not in my control. What I know is that for the first time in my adult life, I have accounts only I have access to, a home only I hold the title to, and a morning routine that includes coffee on a porch when no one else's crisis is waiting for me. That didn't happen by accident. It happened because I finally let an action produce its consequence instead of running interference. Some mornings I feel sad about how things went with him. I think that's appropriate. Some mornings I feel completely at peace. I think that's appropriate too.